Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning at West Meets East. We're happy to be here. We're going to talk about PTSD, work, and second chances. My name is Heidi Minkum. I am the Executive Director for the Workplace Disability Network.
And I am Vicki Stewart. I'm Executive Director of Employment Disability Resources in Sioux Falls. And I am happy to welcome our guest today, Tom Anez. June is Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Awareness Month. So today we will be talking about PTSD, disability, resilience, employment, and second chances. Dr. Tom Anez, a disabled combat veteran whose career has been dedicated to helping people navigate some of life's most challenging transitions. Dr. Anez spent a decade with the Department of Veterans Affairs in Sioux Falls as a vocational rehabilitation specialist, assisting veterans as they moved into civilian careers and educational opportunities. He also brings more than 20 years of experience in adult and juvenile corrections and currently serves as a reentry facilitator, helping individuals successfully reintegrate into their communities. Dr. Anez, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you
for
for
having me.
being here. We are super excited to have you here to talk to us about PTSD. Invisible disabilities is kind of something that's near and dear to my heart. So first, we'd like to hear a little bit about you. Can you tell us a little bit about your military experience and what has inspired your lifelong commitment to helping others rebuild and move forward with their lives?
Yeah, so I served in the United States Army for about 5 years as a military police specialist, and then later transitioned over to the U.S. Army Reserve for about 3 years as a human resource manager or specialist. During my time on active duty, I actually spent about 4 years in combat or hazardous duty assignments. Really, that created some experiences that shaped my perspective on resilience, service, and the strength of the human spirit. Um, my commitment to helping others really has been about rebuilding and moving forward. And that really comes from seeing firsthand what people are capable of overcoming in life. I believe that people can adapt, they can grow. I really much believe in the growth mindset. And really, I want to help people be able to find a new path even after facing some of life's most difficult challenges. Being able to really help someone regain confidence, recognizing their own strengths, taking steps towards really finding a better future is really what continues to inspire me and all the different occupational things I've done in my past. It's really become more than just the work that I do. It really feels like a purpose that guides me how I serve others and how I approach life in general.
And Dr. Ness, was there any personal experiences that shaped your perspective on resilience? And how did those experiences influence your professional path that you've taken?
Yeah, so a few personal experiences that really shape the way that I understand resilience specifically, especially like traumatic experiences that I went through when I was in Iraq in combat. That experience really changed my perspective on different challenges and really taught me the importance of really having that growth mindset that I talk a lot about, especially with the inmates I work with at the penitentiary. I learned the difficult experiences can leave really a lasting impact on people in different ways, but they don't have to really define who people are or what they can become or what their future looks like. Um, as a result of my military service, I have a service connected disability related to PTSD, and living through that experience has really given me a deeper understanding of exactly what PTSD and how it affects different people, and really the importance of that support, the healing, and really having the right tools to move forward. It's really something I've really strived in teaching others as well. But it's really strengthened my commitment to helping others face their own challenges, rebuilding their confidence, and really I find hope and purpose in the next chapter of my life. And I always try to, you know, instill that in the people I work with.
That's great. Do you find that your shared lived experience really helps you build trust with the people that you work with?
Yeah, I think, as a disabled combat veteran, I understand what it feels like to face unexpected challenges and have to rebuild different parts of my life after, several different major events that happened to me. My own experiences really shaped the way that I connect with the people that I serve and that I work with, and has really given me a deeper sense of appreciation and almost empathy and even understanding towards the different situations that they're in. I know that everybody's journey looks a little bit different, but I also know that the importance of really having someone listen to them, offer support, really believe in their abilities, really will allow them to be able to move forward. And my experience has really taught me to meet people where they're at. That's very important for me. Is I look at everybody as a unique individual and I meet them where they're at. I don't judge them, and I really help them recognize their own strengths as they work towards that future that we all know that they can have. That's really built on confidence and hope.
Very nice. What lessons have you learned from others facing similar challenges?
Yeah, one of the biggest lessons that I've really learned is really that resilience looks different for everyone. I've seen some people overcome some incredible challenges in their lives by taking things one step at a time, just looking at, the next day, not the future of a month or something like that, just looking at how they can accomplish and be successful in that one day. It's really reminded me that, staying determined, really adapting along the way is really important. And that growth is rarely a straight path at all. There's a lot of different things that can happen, ups and downs. It ebbs and flows often, and really that providing that support, hope, and having someone who believes in you can really make a lasting difference. And that's what I try to do with people that I work with is provide some of that hope.
Wonderful.
That's very nice. So, when we talk about understanding PTSD, a lot of questions come up and discussion, analogies are made, things are said about it, but people still really must misunderstand what it is and what's involved in having someone who has PTSD. How do you explain PTSD to someone who has never encountered it?
Yeah, so I explain PTSD really as a normal response to an abnormal, almost traumatic experience that happens to somebody. It's not just difficult memory. Some people think it's just one thing that happened. It could be a series of things that happened that caused it. But ultimately, it's something that can change how the brain and the body really responds to that stress and any type of perceived danger they might be in long after the trauma is really passed. I still have experiences where I was at in Iraq, they had a lot of burning garbage, and burning garbage was something that was common. So going out driving in the country and smelling garbage burning can actually be a trigger for me. So that memory years later can still trigger me, and I have to learn about that, right? But I think it's also important for people to understand that symptoms can include intrusive thoughts or memories. It can be something as simple as anxiety. It can be heightened alertness. Some people have sleep challenges, even emotional reactions that they can have long after the incident has happened. But understanding PTSD this way really helps reduce stigma and encourages really compassion for others in understanding how that person is dealing with it or really experiencing the PTSD symptoms.
What are some common misconceptions that you find people have about PTSD?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions about PTSD is that it only happens to combat veterans, or that it really affects people, or reflects weakness, I guess is how I'll put it. In reality, PTSD can really impact anyone who has experienced any type of trauma, regardless of their background or how strong they are. Healing takes time for everyone, and that looks differently for everyone too. But having that support and sometimes professional help is something that's really needed to get through it. And understand that, understanding PTSD as a whole can really help reduce stigma and can create more compassion for those that are working through that process.
And so let's look at one person maybe, and like for a typical person, because you said it's a very personal thing. It depends on the person, obviously, but in their day-to-day life, how does it affect them? Like if employers were looking at someone and going, I think I've got a problem here, what would this person be showing that might be demonstrating that they're struggling with something like PTSD?
Yeah, I mean, again, it affects everybody differently, but for the most part, a lot of people have similar things that happen with that. Really, how somebody responds to stress, and how easily they can be triggered. They can affect relationships, whether it's personal relationships or professional relationships, and it can impact a lot of the different situations all around them. It may show up as anxiety. It might be constantly being on guard or happen that what we call hypervigilance. It could be again that sleep disorders or struggles that they end up having, remembering difficult memories, avoiding certain situations, things like that. Oftentimes are how that's happening. Really, with that support you talk about with employers or people around you and family and friends, it's really understanding. It's having the right resources available to you. People can really learn to manage symptoms and continue moving forward. I think I'm kind of a model for that. I don't let it define who I am, and I've actually used it to build my career, both professionally and personally, um, through those processes. So yeah.
Thank you.
And Tom, I know you've already talked about how PTSD isn't only related to people in the military. So, can you maybe talk about the broader population, specifically those involved in the justice system, since you work pretty closely with those folks?
Yeah, so yeah, it can impact any type of survivors of accidents, abuse, violence, disasters, loss if they lost somebody close to them and they witnessed it or was involved in that process, or any other type of life changing events can cause PTSD. Really understanding this broader concept is really important. It can help again reduce that stigma I talk about, and it can encourage that compassion and support for everyone that's affected by it. Specifically to the incarceration, there's a lot of studies. I just heard about a study last week actually that talked about just spending one day in a prison setting or incarceration setting can be traumatic just from the environment, the change in the atmosphere, the fear that you have of being in a situation where you're outside of your normal comfort zone. Um, Things happen in a jail or a prison that can change or alter your mind in ways that can be unhealthy. So, working with justice involved individuals on a constant basis like is something I really keep in mind about that PTSD concept, trying to normalize as much as possible in their daily lives as possible. I work with juveniles at Juvenile Detention Center. I've been there 19 and a half years. And with those youth, sometimes because the brain development is different with youth, they don't have the same coping mechanisms or skills that adults often have. And so I find a lot of times, even working through some of the traumatic events that they have coming in a juvenile detention center, with some of the horrific things that they've done and reality starting to set in, um, the PTSD and the mental health is something that we take very, very serious in incarceration, just because of the effect that people can have when they're in that different environment or that different atmosphere. So yeah.
Sure, I never thought about that. That's fascinating.
I didn't either. So, Rapid City, well, in South Dakota, we have a large population of veterans who live here. Those veterans normally have families, they've got coworkers, supervisors, even friends that are all around them. Um, what are some signs that people might notice when someone is struggling with that PTSD, like, and which ones are often overlooked? That's the other part.
Yeah. So there's a lot of signs that someone might be struggling with PTSD, but they're not obvious usually. Some loved ones or coworkers might notice changes in a person's behavior, their mood, even daily routines can be some of those different hints that something's changing. Irritability. I said anxiety already, but that's a big one. Withdrawal from different things that they used to enjoy doing. If you start noticing a change in sleeping patterns, again, the hypervigilance, being over alert quite often, and then again, avoiding certain situations that can be triggering to them. Um, Sometimes it can even be trouble focusing for some of them, or even a desire to change in relationships or things like that. Recognizing these signs with compassion is something that somebody should be doing if they recognize these signs. And again, help with that support, that connection with any professional help that they might need. And then some of the things that's really overlooked, are some of the quieter ones, like that emotional numbness that somebody might have. Again, I talk about withdrawal. That's oftentimes overlooked when somebody, especially if they're single or they don't have people in their lives every single day, people won't notice that they've started withdrawal, or even loss of interest in things they've done before. Or somebody might just think that they just don't enjoy something anymore. In reality, it's something that they enjoy doing, but they don't see themselves doing that because of that change of interest. And a lot of these things are oftentimes really confused or mistaken for personality changes, um, which is oftentimes where they go unnoticed by other people around them.
And for someone who's in that position where they're seeing some of these signs that are concerning them, how is the best way to respond? I mean, obviously, it's not going to be like, oh, just get over it. But what is the best way to respond to the situation to try to help them help themselves?
Yeah, this is a question that should be directed to my wife because she's been dealing with 20 years of my PTSD. But yeah, I think what it really comes down to is patience. My wife has extreme patience. I love her to death for the compassion. And then she doesn't judge me when I have my bad days. She doesn't judge me for that. She is very receptive to the fact that Of course, she knew me before Iraq, so she knows the old me, and she knows how I've adapted and my life has changed for the good and for the bad. But she doesn't judge me for any of that kind of stuff. That's important. Having someone that is able to listen to you, that can offer that support. My wife doesn't make me feel like I'm doing this alone either. She's a partner with it. So again, people can respond by making people aware that, hey, I'm here for the long run. I'm here to support you, that kind of thing, right? Really to make that meaningful difference that's needed. It's really important to avoid pressure or assumptions, and instead really encourage connection with others, and especially with trusted people, mentors, coaches, that kind of stuff. And of course, being aware that professional services or professional might be useful. I always told everybody when I worked at the VA, all my clients, that mental health is really treated one of three ways: um, therapy, medication, or a combination of both. Usually works to get somebody. So just being aware and open that there are different modalities that can be used to try to help treat symptoms, or try to minimize some of those symptoms in somebody's life. That's important for the people around them to be able to respond appropriately.
Thank you.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about PTSD in the workplace. So you spent years helping veterans transition into civilian employment. What challenges do individuals with PTSD commonly encounter when entering or maybe returning to the workforce?
Yeah, I think the a couple things come to mind. Managing stress is oftentimes hard for somebody. Anger management can oftentimes be hard for them. Simple concentration can be difficult. They're easily distracted by things, especially with hypervigilance, might cause them to need to adjust their position in the office differently. Yeah, not having their back towards doors, or that type of stuff is very important for them to be aware of. So really adapting to different changes, feeling comfortable in the environment that they're in, those are things that oftentimes are difficult for them. um, and again, with understanding, support, the right resources, accommodations that might be needed, those are all things that can really help somebody with PTSD be successful, and bring that resilience into the workforce, and really bring skills in the workforce that they have, that would bring value to the employer.
So again, we always talk about don't focus on the disability, focus on a person's ability, no matter what their disability is, right? So
Yes.
what are some of the barriers that are less obvious maybe in the workplace?
Yeah, again, that managing stress, communication needs. Oftentimes, they'll have difficulty just doing basic communication skills, and then again, functioning in high pressure environments sometimes can be triggers for some of the individuals with PTSD. So that's something to be aware of. Again, those are very visible ones, but some less obvious ones that you're talking about really is that hypervigilance, that anxiety, that sleep patterns, issues with that. Sometimes it's even having time management problems, things like that, just being able to focus on getting where they need to be. Sometimes it's something as simple as traffic in the morning, maybe altering a work a flex schedule or something to help them out, so they're not traveling in high travel times, because that anxiety can be on the roadway, that type of stuff. Many individuals work really hard to manage the challenges that they have, but that's why understanding and support from employers is really paramount to make sure that things are going well.
So, when Vicky's talking about barriers and stuff like that in the workplace, what are some things that employers can do that is supportive and not intrusive to kind of reduce those barriers? Are there simple accommodations that can make a significant difference for them, for
Yeah,
individuals?
I think that promoting trust, respect for the individuals, open communication is really important as well. Sometimes providing the employee some very clear expectations. Again, that flexibility I talked about earlier. Having supportive leadership is important as well. And then allowing for any access to any type of resources that the employer can provide, even if that's some type of employee assistance program or something like that. But anything that they can do to employee feel valued in that situation. Um, have them feel like they're successful without any type of assumptions or stigmas is really important. And again, some of the simple accommodations can often make a significant difference, such as flexible scheduling, clear communication that I talked about already. Really predictable routines is also really important for some people with having some of those things. Just even some of the small adjustments can reduce unnecessary stress and really help them stay focused and productive and successful. For me, having my back to the door is something that I don't like at all. So being able to allow me to be able to arrange my office how I need to feel like I'm in a safe environment will make me much more productive.
That's a good point. I had never thought of that. Letting them set up the office the way they need to for that safety factor. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's
Yeah.
some good information.
And, Heidi and I work with employers. So, what would you suggest are ways that we can encourage employers to hire people with PTSD? And some of the resources that we might be able to provide, maybe there's a supervisor who's never worked with someone with PTSD. Where do they even begin? How can we make them feel more comfortable?
Yeah, I think that the big thing is employers should not feel that they have to be experts in PTSD at all. I'm not an expert and I have PTSD. I'm still learning about my own symptoms every once in a while. Something will change in the way that I react to things. So I don't expect an employer to ever be a subject matter expert in it. But really, I think it's about treating people with respect, listening to them, really creating that environment that makes them feel safe and comfortable, uh, even comfortable enough to be able to ask for any additional supports that they may need. Again, focus on the individual and their needs, meet them where they're at. Like I said earlier, identify the strengths that they have that they bring to the team and really exploit that. And then um, try to determine what really helped them be successful rather than just focusing on the challenges that they face. Again, you said it yourself. It's not about the disability, it's about the ability. Focus on that more than anything else. I think that's what you'll see that will be most effective for an employer.
Great, thank you.
So, one of the things that you talk about is that you're working with people who have been incarcerated. Um, what can communities do that better support these individuals that are trying to rebuild their lives after incarceration? Because that's a tough thing for those individuals as well. When they're trying to reintegrate back into society, they're trying to straighten their lives out. They're trying to be part of, enjoy life and do right. What are some of the things that businesses and the communities do to support those individuals after their incarceration and their trauma and all of and their disability?
Yeah, I see a lot of similarities between my work with veterans and with those that are incarcerated in really that transition we talk about returning to the community. Think about somebody that's been deployed. They've been away from their family for a year. They come back. They're dealing with a lot of mental health issues and trying to retransition back into the normal life, different than was when they were deployed. The same thing with somebody that's been in prison for a couple of years and they're trying to transition back out. They're really just looking for that support. They're really looking, trying to navigate that major life change that's just occurred. Oftentimes, they're having to rebuild their routines, their relationships, rebuilding that confidence that they once had in themselves, and really a sense of purpose is a big thing, especially somebody transitioning out of the military. It's very similar to somebody coming out of prison. The identity that they had as a soldier or as an airman or of their military service is different than what civilian life has in store for them. So that transition can be uh, difficult for many of those individuals. Really, what I've learned to do is that people do better when they have that support, when they have accountability, when they have somebody that's really believing in their ability to really be successful and move forward. Um, I love the term mentor. Having somebody in the community that can really be a kind of that guiding star to kind of help them out. I believe a second chance, along with the right resources and guidance, can really be the difference in really that powerful turning point for them in that transition.
Because recidivism is a thing. Like a
Yep.
lot of them struggle to do that reintegration and find themselves going back to prison because it was easier to fall back on crime than it was to,
Right.
you
And I
know,
teach my reentry classes to the offenders. Really, it's about people, places, and things. Don't surround yourself by positive people. And if you go back to the same place, the same people, the same atmosphere,
yes.
same environment, you're likely to commit the same crimes again or be in that environment to cause that. So I always talk about people, places, things. Change that, change the cognitive behavioral changes that you have in your mind about what life was like before. Because if you go back to what life was like before, you'll find that you're on the same path and you're coming back into that same environment again of prison. So, yeah.
And what role can community, like me and Vicky work for community organizations, what role can community organizations play in helping these individuals that are trying to do reentry and find second chances in their life?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with organizations is again being able to provide resources. Um, Luckily for veterans, veterans have the ability to use the VA. The VA has an awesome network of resources that can help guide them along the way. But for somebody else that isn't a veteran, that doesn't have the same resources as the VA, I always recommend the Helpline Center. I used to work there as a call taker at one point in my career, um, uh, and they've got a lot of resources. And so for somebody struggling, call the crisis line. I'm glad they got away from the term suicide line, because a lot of people in crisis aren't suicidal; they just are in crisis. And having somebody else to talk to in the other line can really be the difference it takes to make it through the rest of that day and be able to focus on priorities for the next thing. So I really like the Helpline Center. Again, in that crisis call taking process, usually they identify some resources so that that person calling the crisis line is able to know what next steps are for some of those resources. It kind of gives them a little bit of hope to make it through the next day. So I think that that's really important. I hope that answered your question. But yeah, just resources and
Absolutely.
support. Yep.
Something that came to my mind, Tom, is that, you know, disability disclosure is often a big issue when people are entering or re-entering the workforce. Do you find that people with PTSD are pretty comfortable in sharing that they have PTSD, or is it something that people kind of try to hide or maybe not make their employers aware of right away?
I think it depends a lot on where the veteran's at or the person PTSD is in with their treatment plan or progress. Um, for me personally, I think that the stigma's changed quite a bit in the last probably 20 years. I know when I got out of the military before, if you told somebody in your chain of command that you have PTSD, you were basically treated poorly because you can't be in the fight, you tear down the whole morale of the unit, all these things. So you didn't want to be that person. One thing that's really changed in the military is now they actually encourage people to come forward and get the help so that they're able to work on themselves, get to a better place, so they are able to be a better warfighter. So that stigma in the military has changed. But I think to kind of answer your question for civilians, without that military concept, like I look at it as I'm not going to talk to them about my struggles specifically during the hiring process. What I am going to be asking for is accommodations once I've been brought on board, because they hired me for the values that I bring to the team, not for any of the negative things, but I want them to be consciously aware about the cognitive challenges that I might have and what are some things that could be triggers and some of the accommodations I might need to be able to make me able to provide that value that they hired me for. So I usually would recommend somebody wait to talk about accommodations till after they've been onboarded, just so it isn't deterrent. You don't want an employer to not hire you because of your issues and then hire somebody else that's less qualified or can bring less value just because they're afraid of what that might look like with somebody with a mental health issue. So
Great insight. Thank you.
And I want to go back to something else that you said as well. You talked about the fact that you are now years down the road and you still have triggers. And I think it's an important point to make that you've just made is PTSD does not go away. It basically stays with you. You can learn to manage it, right? But it's not necessarily something that anyone that's in the support circle of a person with PTSD can actually look at them and say, would you just get over it already? Because there is no getting over it. Is that correct?
yeah, so I think
Or,
there's a misconception between post traumatic stress and post traumatic stress disorder. Disorder is a lifelong disability that somebody has because their mind has actually changed. The chemical balances has changed. It becomes a disorder, right? You can be involved in a car accident and then over a period of a few months, maybe be having some anxiety behind getting behind the wheel of a car, but that may go away. In those situations, that is more of a post traumatic stress, but it's not a disorder. It's when it becomes life altering and becomes something that changes the chemical compounds of the brain and alters your ability to be able to cognitively work through those issues without support. That's where you have to start looking at it. Is it just a stress that you were involved in, or is it a full disorder that you have? So, yeah, somebody with PTSD, it is a lifelong thing. For a lot of us veterans in particular, we can get rated by the VA for disability. I'm totally and permanently disabled. I'm still able to fully function and work, but the VAs recognize that the trauma that I went through in my military service was enough to impact me so great that they've rated me at 100% totally and permanently disabled. Now, with that being said, I'm very lucky that I'm able to still be a productive member of society. I can find purpose in other things. I'm able to continue a career, went back to school, got my master's and my doctorate. I did all these things because I didn't let PTSD define who I was. And there's a lot of people with PTSD that they choose to isolate themselves or to not work towards their full potential. Um, and that's where I want people to be aware that you can be successful. You can be 100% disabled from the VA with PTSD and still have a full functioning life with purpose. I just have to alter the way I do certain things because I've learned to cope with it a different way than somebody without PTSD.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
We are at our 30 minutes, a
Yeah,
little
that
past
went quick.
and that flew by.
So, as we wrap this up, is there any messages you'd most like people to understand about this? And when you think about the future, what gives you hope about the inclusion of individuals and PTSD and second chances for these individuals that have been incarcerated?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I'll say is that I think that the stigma is not as strong as it used to be, which is hopeful. I think people are starting to recognize that PTSD does not define who I am as an individual. I look at it as PTSD has actually strengthened me. It's made me more well-rounded. It's made me be more resilient towards things. It's allowed me to be more empathetic towards others. There's so many things that PTSD has actually benefited my life, and it's hard to think about someone with PTSD saying that there's a benefit from it, but there are if you can learn to embrace it and work with it. But again, it doesn't define who I am. It's part of who I am, but it's not me. And then I think again that stigma. People need to not be afraid to be able to ask for help when they need it. They need to be able to ask between their employers, their friends, their family for that support when it's needed, and to seek out those resources. And by all means, if there's ever a situation, seek out professional help. There's lots of really good, talented people out there. And for all of those veterans or anybody with PTSD that feels like they're so overwhelmed that they can't go on, just to remember that they are important. They're important to themselves, important to somebody cares about them. So make good choices and that get the help that they need.
Dr. Anez, thank you
Wonderful.
so
Dr.
much for
Anez,
being. Oh,
I
go
was
ahead,
just
Vicki.
going to say that. Thank you so much. Your insights and sharing your personal experience is so impactful.
Not a problem.
And well, thank you to everyone who is watching our episode today with for our West Meets Eat session on the recognition of PTSD awareness. We appreciate the time and engagement, and we look forward to seeing you at our next conversation on Wednesday, June 22nd. And we are going to be having a conversation about the ADA. So if you're interested, please join us and have a wonderful day. And thanks again, Dr. Anez.
Just to clarify, July 22nd. I think you said
Yes,
June.
correct.
Oh,
Correct.
yes, it is June 22nd. I would like to have the notes that you're right. June 22nd. We want you to come on June 22nd.
No,
Thank you.
July 22nd.
Oh, listen to them, not me. Thank you. July 22nd. Yeah, we've already had June 22nd. All righty. Yeah, July. Thank you again for that and for joining us.
Thank you.